All right. Shalom, everybody. Shalom and welcome to the Yishai Fleischer Show. We're going to have a great program with you with Rav Mike Feuer. We're going to go through the Torah portion of Mishpatim, which is one of the more interesting and more Pharisaic. That's right. You've heard of parasitic. That's not us. We're Pharisaic. We're going to talk about being a Pharisee. And I mean by that is the law of the Jewish people, which is this Torah portion. This law, this is the stuff that makes it really, makes life really work well in terms of torts, in terms of being able to distinguish between levels of crimes, and all that is the nitty gritty of Judaism. And then at the end, we're going to go zoom really wide out about the receiving of the Torah and what it's all about. And let us bring in Rav Mike Feuer for this pre-show. We're still in the pre-show. Oh, what did I do? Here we go, Rav Mike. There you go.
Well,
Rav Mike. How are you?
That was so disruptive.
Hold on one second. Why do
you get a little echo there?
Hold on. You're having an echo because the default mic, the default speaker needs to be redefaulted. Let's redefault it.
You just made it Mike's fault, didn't you?
No, here we go. Okay, you're on. Rav Mike Feuer, you're with us. How are you, sir?
Oh, thank God. I am feeling strong in this. But they lifted the siege. Not that my life has really changed all that much, but, I feel like it at least needs to be noted.
What did I say last week? I ran the
blockade.
I ran the blockade. That's exactly right. And I just want you to know that we can probably just start our show because Lou Weiss says we look and sound great. Be'ezrat Hashem, of course.
Well, give me a second at least to share it, please.
Yeah, that's right. Get on there and share it to the world. Of course, you can share it on your Facebook page or your other social medias as well. And also last week, I asked people to tell me what they think about the future of social media, what they're into. And I'd love to hear from you what you really believe in. A lot of people are now talking about Clubhouse. Is that a thing? Should we do Clubhouse? And MeWe and Rumble. I still want to hear more answers from people, what they really think. If I had to pick one, right now the one I picked actually is to try to get tighter on Instagram. But our good friend Golda Yisrael Reuven says, Shalom, guys, and Shalom back to you. I think it's time to start, Rav Mike.
I'm there.
All right. Shalom, everybody, and welcome to the Yishai Fleischer Show, broadcasting live from Judea to the world. You're a part of it wherever you are. And shalom to Rav Mike Feuer. Rav Mike, shalom, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, shalom, Yishai. It's good to be with you here at the top of Mount Sinai.
That's right. The top of Mount Sinai it is, because we're going to be dealing with the Torah portion of Mishpatim. And it's an awesome Torah portion. It's one of the few Torah portions where it's like a I like when they say decalogue. I know it's only about 10, but I like that. But it's a log. It's not just a decalogue. It's a many log of laws, of Jewish laws, and actually I would say that it's really the basis of morality in many ways. These laws. I'll just give one example. The distinction between murder and manslaughter, which is found in this week's Torah portion, is a huge one. To not be able to distinguish, to basically go into the mind of the perpetrator and say, hey, this guy that drove this car and looked down at his radio, he didn't mean to kill or murder. He killed and he's negligent. But the difference between negligent homicide, i.e. manslaughter, and murder is a huge one. And to be able to make that distinction is really, I think, the basis of actually judgment and morality. So that's what this Torah portion is really about, at least the first parts of it.
Yeah, I mean, oftentimes it's in the fine distinctions, and not just in the fine distinctions of action, but in the frames in which we understand them. I mean, the Ten Commandments, people often say, thou shalt not kill. It's incorrect, right? The Ten Commandments say, thou shalt not murder.
Right.
And murder is the same act of taking a life. It's just within a context of values and larger social structures that looks very different. And that's absolutely the origins of morality for us and really for a large part of the Western world.
So just before we get to the stuff of this week's Torah portion, and there's a lot, and I've worked hard to kind of try to mark up what we should talk about, because there's much more than we're going to be able to talk about. I just want to say that there's a verse that we say in the Psalms, which is Ashrei sheyochaz v'nipetz et olalayich ala sala, which means like, blessed be he, or praiseworthy be he who grabs your, in this case, Edom's or Rome's youngin and smashes it on the stone. And that's a very, let's just say it's one of the least politically correct statements in the
But
whole
very
Bible.
biblical.
Quite biblical, that's right. But I actually have an explanation of this phrase for modern times, which I think is very suitable. The word olalayich means young ones, nursing children, but it also comes from the word alilah, which means narrative, the
Yeah.
tale.
Yeah.
And
It calls
praiseworthy
it
is
effect
he.
aspect of narrative in particular.
Okay. So praiseworthy is he who takes your narratives and smashes them on the stone. I'm talking about the ICC deciding that's going to have jurisdiction over Israel and Judea and Samaria, and now investigate Israel for war crimes. I'm talking about the big problems that the Jewish community of Hebron is having right now on Wikipedia. Listen to this, Mike Feuer. Listen to this, Rav Mike.
I'm listening.
This guy called us and he's like, "You guys have to get into Wikipedia." He goes, "You've heard of fake news?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Well, Wikipedia is fake truth."
Mm.
I was like, "Oh, dang." And we are having a heck of a time because truth is being voted on. And if there's more people on the side of the other truth, you're voted out. It
Right.
reminds me of the UN a little bit.
Well, but I was actually going to say there's a very important parallel there, which is we could call it consensus reality. You know,
Consensus reality.
it's
Mm-hmm.
consensus reality. It's like, well, we all just agree that this is what is, and then that we'll operate on that. And it's not just like, because the problem with like fake truth is it sounds like you're speaking of something which is floating up in the air, like discourse. No, consensus reality people act upon.
Mm-hmm.
And as much as I rolled my eyes with your noting of the ICC, which I just think is a ridiculous institution to begin with, there are potential real consequences if the world decides to get behind an institution like that, because
Right.
they create a consensus reality in the same way. People look at that Wikipedia page, you could say, what do I care what it says about Wikipedia? We're living on the ground. We have real homes. We have real people. The answer is, well, but if enough people read that and it guides their actions and decision making, it's a consensus reality.
Yes, 100%. And this is now one of the main battlegrounds. This reality, truth, perception. It's really one of the main battlegrounds. And what's interesting about the guy that said this to me, he said to me, it's not only about the now. What goes on Wikipedia and sticks is about what's going to be perceived on later.
Oh,
That is to
yes.
say, right, and that was an interesting way to think about that, which is like this is not just a fight for the ground, holding onto the ground now. It's holding onto the intellectual ground and to the historical ground later down the line, and the way this whole generation is going to be perceived. And we're arguing about street names, Shuhada Street versus King David Street.
Yeah.
Is it Martyr Street or is it King David Street? And by the way, both of these names came in the 70s. The minute that the Jews
The
called the
heyday of
street
martyrdom.
name. Seriously,
No, I'm not
seriously,
kidding.
yeah.
It was the heyday of international terrorism.
Right, that's right, that's right. And then I wouldn't doubt that Yasser Arafat himself gave this street in Hebron, which was, by the way, not a street 200 years ago. He gave it the street this name, but this whole narrative that's being weaved on the Hebrew Wikipedia page, mind you, is one of Israeli occupation and theft, and no mention of Israel's ancient claim to Hebron, and also its pre-modern purchases of land and a community that has lived there almost in perpetuity for 3,800 years, perpetually for 3,800 years. So that is we are this what you call consensus reality or fake truth. This is a battleground right now.
I just want to just point out push on it for a second, because a lot of the work I do in the Jewish story is about telling a story of the past in order to impact present and future. What you have here is people who have already decided, they've made their analysis of the problems in the present and what they want their future to look like, and they're willing to renegotiate or reinterpret or just lie about the past in order to get that. You understand? And
Right.
and in I wouldn't say in their defense, but if we're one were sort of inclined to be charitable, right? What they're saying is like, well, but the present is what really matters. Real people, real actions, etc. So therefore, if we can tell a story of the past that serves the present, that is morally legitimate. And now part of me agrees, but part of me would point out is that this is always the downfall of the narrow-minded and the dictatorial. It's because they really think they understand in an absolute sense, the present and future. And so therefore they try to construct a past which is useful. And in the end of the day, what you're pointing out is that aside from the fact that we both believe that they're wrong, but the damage that they're doing is extensive. Let people know the reality and act upon it. Don't spoon feed them because you already know what you want them to do.
Right.
People don't believe in freedom.
And also you delegitimize the platform itself. You delegitimize the platform, just like the media has allowed itself to become delegitimized. And by the way, politics as well. Politicians are always decrying the fact that the people don't trust them. But the
Why
fact
would you?
is, right, exactly. The courts, the media, the politics, they have all perjured themselves. They have all showed themselves to be...
Oh my gosh. You know what? I mean, I just say to my wife every day when we're wondering whether our kids are going to go back to school or what's the next. I just say, and it's frustrating because, of course, the only reliable reality is the fact that it's unreliable. Right? That is the reality in which we're living right now, which is that you need to learn to adapt to the inconsistent, right? I just have taken to saying, well, let's just wait until our political masters have decided what our fate will be, and then they'll let us know.
Right. Well, or how about this fact that you have to tell your children, don't trust this stuff. Like one of the main things today is you watch the news with your kids, and you're like, this is how you should trust this. This is how you should trust this. This guy's not trustworthy because of this. This channel's not trustworthy because of this. This court is not trustworthy because of this. Be careful with that. And you basically teach your children that it's a world of distrust. You almost have to in order for them to be able to filter through the systems that try to control you. And by the way, that's also the social media platforms themselves that their main interest is to get us hooked on them on their screen.
Yeah, they're businesses. They're businesses,
right? But there's business on this business. Wait. There's a great dry cleaning laundry service called Zohar Dry Cleaning Laundry Service in Kikar Davidka, in the Davidka Square in Jerusalem. They're not trying to keep you in the door the whole time. They want to...
No, they're trying to keep your business.
Yeah, so you give them the laundry, and then you get it back.
But my point when I said that is that people have an illusion that social media is somehow an altruistic means. Right. It's a form of communication there to serve human freedom and et cetera, et cetera. Okay, maybe, but bottom line, it's a business. It's a for-profit function, as is every newspaper you read, as is every news media outlet you watch on television, etc. And you can never lose sight of that.
Sure, but to understand that because they're much more like drug dealers, in the sense
that's also a business.
Right, and that kind of business, like they need you addicted, not just as a customer, like coming back to the dry cleaning. You know what I mean? I don't
think it's just a difference in business model. It's just difference in business model.
But that difference is a big difference. There's a big difference there. Okay, there's a big difference in trying to keep somebody sucked into something for a long time, or giving somebody their clean laundry back. I don't think the guy at the laundromat is like praying at night that you spill a soup on your shirt. I don't think the guy's like, I pray to you, God, that there's more dirty laundry tomorrow. No, he says this is part of the world, is dirty laundry. That these guys, they pray.
That's the truth.
Right, but they pray like, I want these guys to be, they work on, imagine if the laundry guy was also the same guy who made cups that made more spills.
Right, the bottom of the Chinese takeout.
Right.
Boxes, and it just like automatically would collapse as soon as you picked them up from the store. Yeah, I get it.
Oh, look at that! Gosh, look at that!
Oh, what a coincidence that I'm getting 120% increase in stained shirts.
Right,
with oil.
Exactly. Okay, I think we understood each other. Very good.
Fine, fair enough. I do want to sound one more note in what you said, which is that teaching one's children to be skeptical of structures of power may feel painful, but it's important to note that has been the role of marginalized and oppressed peoples both throughout history and in the current day. You could go take a poll of the average African American and what they teach their children about police, as opposed to what, say, I was taught about police growing up. Or here in our locality, you ask the average Palestinian, not jihadist, just talking about guy on the street who's just trying to make a living, what he teaches his kids about the army and what we teach ours. And without weighing in on the right, wrong, etc., we as Jews have a rich history of knowing that law is something to be circumvented at best and avoided at all costs, right? And one of the challenges that we hold in our present manifestation is, how do we keep that wisdom of understanding that power is meant to be in the service of people and not a tool for their suppression, and yet still maintain a literal political and geographic base from which to teach that. You understand? We have to be both the powerful and this is something we have not done particularly well with.
I love what you said. I love what you said. I just would add just that one little layer, which is, I think you were saying it, but just to make it clear, which is that distrust power, but you're the power. Like, it's our state, right?
Yeah.
And I actually,
because too much distrust power just empowers the dictators.
Right. And it doesn't create a system which we want, which is we want our state to assert power. But at the same time, I understand the Haredi ultra-Orthodox outlook today. I understand. I actually think that there's a certain health in it, because there's actually you have to give back to the state a sense like we are not in your pocket. We are not little communist serfs. We have a voice. And they
call me a communist serf.
Yeah, a serf of the commune. Okay. Let's keep going for a second. I just want to say
communist serf is what happened in Odessa in the mid 20th century, right?
On the Black Sea. Okay.
Exactly.
Says Johan Bilo George. He says Rabbi Yishai and Rav Mike Baruch Hashem live from Oman. Okay, I love it. We have friends in Oman, and I just want to say one tiny caveat, which is Abraham Accords. We got to keep pushing that, despite any other forces right now that are going to try to torpedo that.
Yeah, because of those forces, because it's not just some small little alliance of convenience, which it also, of course, has that aspect, but it's also a potential model for re-understanding the Middle East.
I think I read a big article about the Iranian lobby. I mean, the Iranian regime's lobby in Washington. It's very powerful. It's a very powerful multi-million-dollar lobby that's working in D.C., speaking of reality.
They should get together with the Jews. They could run the country.
Right.
Sorry.
Well, the truth is that the Jews are together with the anti-Iranian lobby, which is the whole Los Angeles, Tehrangeles.
Right. The Persian Jews. Right,
and the Persian Jews
know a little bit more
Persians.
about it. Yeah. They know a little bit more about it.
There's like 1 million Persians living in Iran. Luis says, Shalom, gentlemen. Our good friend Mark Pickles says, Boker Tov from beautiful England, of course. We love the good side of the UK. UK, a country. I wish you would do a podcast one time on your show, The Jewish Story, which you would explain the kind of duality that the UK has, like a deep Zionism where Protestant Zionism, what they call Restorationism, comes from, and then the other side, which is like a deep anti-Semitism and wanting to kind of like suppress the Jews and keep them down or evict the Jews from England, like that duality of like being like there's no country that has such a duality of has such a distinction of being the people that helped start the Jewish state and then the ones that stopped Jews from coming home from from Europe. Before the Holocaust, it's like they have such a deep duality. I see it all the time. But Mark falls on one clear side of that. And then we have Shalom from Cyprus. I do not read the Greek alphabet. It's not even like it's similar more to the Russian alphabet, but I don't read Cyrillic. Right? Is that what it's called? Cyrillic? Is that the right?
No, Cyrillic is the Russian alphabet.
So what is this one called? The Greek one?
I don't know.
Okay.
Dare I say it's Greek to me?
Yeah.
It had to be said. I'm sorry. Just let it go.
Yeah. Oh, and here's a very interesting comment from Louise. She says, losing control of our narrative and public opinion has been our problem before. Does the Israeli government have a bureau who fights propaganda so that there's organized, cohesive response and strategy?
Do you know any Jews? Organized, cohesive strategy? That picture behind you is the last time we were organized and cohesive. And that's only because God, in God's own glory, had to be there to make it happen. And even then, all it took was Moshe to turn his back for 40 days, and we were dancing around the golden calf.
Right. We'll get to that in two or three portions. I actually want to just answer Luis one thing, which is, truth is, government doesn't do a good job of this. The private sector is better at answering anti-Israelism than and certainly our foreign ministry is considered one of the weakest ministries in Israel.
Although whose responsibility that is an open question.
True what you're saying, and we're not going to get into that. That's inside baseball, but I know what you're talking about exactly. But I can tell you that when I go to the foreign ministry, you know what? There's a lot of good people working at the foreign ministry. There's a lot of good people. That was not a pot shot at the foreign ministry by me. Right. I know what you were talking about. I just want to say there's some great folks, including some great Arabs, pro-Israel Arabs, who work at the foreign ministry. But still, it's the private sector that's going to do the best job, including if you've seen Malka's Great response, little video, Malka's response to Ariel Gold.
I heard she trounced her.
Yeah, but did you see the short 2-minute
I
clip of
didn't.
it?
Nah, nah.
Of
I
Mike?
don't. I actually, for all the time I spend producing media, I consume very little of it.
Right. Well, go to my Twitter feed and you'll see it's worth a two. I promise you when I say it's worth a 2-minute gander.
Maybe for Malka, I'll do it.
Yeah, I'm telling you, it's a high level like women battle. Okay,
Yeah.
it's roller derby of
I heard
the
she
narrative
thrashed
war.
her.
Yeah. Anyway, let's get to this Torah portion.
Please.
Before I started the show, I talked about that it's pharisaic, not parasitic. I saw you made a little.
Those two words should, considering the history of anti-Semitism, probably not be used together, even in jest.
Even in jest, you might be right. But there is a reason I'm making the joke. It's because when I found out that some of the Christian world has got a problem with the law that the Jewish people are too legalistic. That's a term.
That was one of the origins of Christianity.
Right. I thought to myself, I honestly, and I say this with love and respect, I thought to myself, that is so dumb. That's what I thought to myself. I'm just telling you the truth of what happened. I just thought to myself, wow, you don't understand the power of law and that God's law goes down to the nitty gritty. Boy, did you like lose out by turning it into just like a religion of love, but no stuff of life. Like, wow, like that is a loss for you. Like, if at least in Islam, I've got a friend, Professor Zev Magen, who compared the Jewish laws to Islamic laws, and it's like there's something there to live by.
Oh yeah, this jurisprudence, the Islamic approach is far closer to the Torah than. Listen, but you have to identify a deeper issue there, which is that historically speaking, Christianity began as essentially a messianic end of days movement within rabbinic Judaism, and it wasn't just a rejection of law; it was a rejection of this world. That this world was over, and that there was something new coming. Now, if they had been right, so they would have gambled and won. But as it turns out, the world did not disappear, nor do we theologically believe it was a mistake or a doomed entity. And so what happened to Christian culture is it was forced to adopt Greco-Roman law. Don't miss that. And people often say that the Roman Empire adopted Christianity. It's a phrase you hear. It's actually, in my humble opinion, a misnomer. Christianity adopted the Roman Empire. Ideas control bodies, not vice versa. Right? And obviously, there's an interplay. But the Greco-Roman law and the values embedded in it often work at direct odds with the core values that Christianity inherited from Torah. And it leads to many difficult and sometimes fruitful, but mostly difficult cross currents in the history of the development of particularly sort of patristic, like early post-apostolic. I can't even say it. You're an apostle. It's apostolistic. I can't say it. Whatever. Patristic Christianity. Like there's a lot to be said there, but that world rejecting element. I mean, law ultimately in Torah is rooted in the fact that we believe that the world matters. It matters what shoe you put on. It matters what you put in your mouth. It matters how you sleep with your spouse. Fill in the blank. And that's not to say that there aren't also sort of the overarching moral, ethical, spiritual themes, God forbid. But the two are not divorced from one another.
Right, and that's, you said it so well. And the magic word in the magic letter in this week's Torah portion is ve. Ve'ele. And these are the statutes. These are the laws. And Rashi stops her and he's like, that ve is very important. Just like you heard the Ten Commandments, just like Moses went up to Sinai and got was close to God and was kind of right there and was a miraculous event. And this is the nitty gritty of how to live life. And here it's coming.
Right?
What's that?
Vava Mosif al Davar Rishon, meaning it's the connector that comes to tell you I haven't discarded the first and replaced it with the second, but rather the second is intrinsically connected to the first.
Right. So Rashi says Ma Rishonim Misinai Af Elu Misinai. Right. Just like the first things you heard, the Ten Commandments were Sinai, so these nitty gritty laws are from Sinai. And the other meaning of that, well, I'm not going to go for it. I have to choose today. We have so much to talk about.
We got so much. All right, move on. I won't comment.
All right, so let's look for a little star where I put down a star here. And yeah, I'm telling you, there's so much info. I'm telling this to the listeners now that we have to really decide what to pick out and talk about today.
I'm following your lead, man.
let's touch about this for a second. A slave. You own a slave. It's time for him. And now this slave got sold to you because he either was destitute and wanted to survive and live and thrive and have basically 7 years of livelihood.
It's
And
indentured servitude.
that's right. Or he was caught in theft and could not pay it off. So that's another way of getting to indentured servitude. But that servitude is not a slave for life. It's a slave for a certain amount of time. It's time for that slave to go. But the slave says, you know what? I really, really like this life and I'm comfortable here and I'm satisfied here. I just don't need much more. The Torah says, well, you've got to actually put him to the doorpost and put an awl through his ear. Is that the word awl? Is that the right word?
Yeah, correct. AWL.
And Rashi says that this is a bad thing. This is there to show you that first thing, why was it done in the ear to make the sign? Because Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai says because this ear must have heard "do not steal" at Sinai, and it's still sold. Or that this ear did not hear that Bnei Israel, the children of Israel, are supposed to be servants to God and not to anybody else like in Egypt. But you
notice that's Rabbi Shimon that said that.
That's is that right? Valacha Amar Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai Valacha v'im mocher atzmo. Rabbi Shimon mikra zeh kimin chomer. Ma nishtanu delo. I think Rabbi Shimon says the second part, which is about the mezuzah.
No, right. You said.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Okay. The Rabbi Shimon says the second part, which is the.
They're my servants and not servants to servants.
Yeah, and he reminds us that why at the doorpost, specifically because the doorpost was that same doorpost that the Jewish people had to mark in order to get freedom in Egypt. So we marked it publicly as a place of freedom, and you're choosing to be a slave, and in a certain place, that's okay, right? You can choose that. There is a method for that, but it's not our favorite behavior. In a way, the Torah says, remember, Jewish people, you're free, and if you choose to be slaves, you got to mark that because that's not really your way.
You know, beyond the techniques of the social institution of slavery and indentured servitude, which is complex, and it should be noted that slavery, the eved ivri, right, slavery within Am Yisrael, as opposed to classic ownership of other peoples outside of Israel, is a social institution. It's connected to the restorative justice model of Torah, meaning there's a goal here of holding people up and reintegrating them in the social fabric. Beyond that, it's important to note that what the Torah is addressing here is one of the basic human dilemmas, which is that we both want and fear freedom. And when we find freedom, we often run as fast away from it as we can.
Right.
Right. And we've spoken about this before, and I've recommended to the listeners that they read Eric Fromm's book, The Escape from Freedom. Here the Torah is just going much more, I mean, in the Torah's fashion, much more visceral, which is that we're going to nail you to the wall on this one. You should know it's legit. You're afraid, and there are institutions out there to take care of you, but you should just know that you are making a fundamental mistake in human nature if you run from freedom. Right.
You know, Rav Mike, one of the things that I've noticed that you really need to have intellectual honesty is courage. And I actually mean like very real courage, because the world really wants to shut you down and put you into a box a lot of times where you have to say what's politically correct. Politically correct is a relatively new term, but it's an old term. It really means that there's social pressures on agreeing to things.
Speech.
Right, and there's
consensus reality.
There's been many scientific experiments on this. The famous one is they put people in a room, they show them a ruler that's a foot long, and they say, well, we have here 7 inches, and in the room are all a bunch of plants that are part of the experiment. They're like, yep, that's 7 inches. And then there's the one guy who's being experimented on, and will he stand up and be like, the emperor has no clothes, or those are 7 inches? Right, that's not a foot. And the experiments show that people basically sit tight and think to themselves, either I don't know, or maybe I don't want to make a fool of myself, or I certainly don't want to stand out. One of the things that I've kind of, like one time my boss called me into a meeting, and I said to him, why do you want me in this meeting? And he says to me, Yishai, you're good at meetings because you ask questions that other people like don't want to ask. And it's something that, like, I was like, oh, okay, I get that now. Like, I basically, it's something to develop inside of yourself, this ability to be like, I am not going to
Just go with the
succumb.
flow.
Right? I'm not going to go with the flow. I'm not going to say the thing that's supposed to be said. It's something to be trained with. But I think here that's related to what you're talking about, which is like freedom is scary. Having the freedom to say what you really think in front of the room, in front of the audience. It's not always easy. Even this morning, I was thinking about, should I mention something in this week's Torah portion? Will it be politically correct or not politically correct? I had that fun. I caught myself.
Right.
You know what I mean? And we make that calculation, sometimes reasonably, but sometimes out of fear.
Yeah, no, I think it's important to note that freedom also comes with a tremendous responsibility. And so therefore, the flip side of what you're saying is that sometimes my calculus also needs to be, if I exercise my freedom recklessly, who will be harmed? Meaning it's not just about social conformity and political correctness, etc. Sometimes it's also, wow, like I have a sword. I've been given a sword. And to swing it in defense of truth or real values is critical. But to just wave it around because I can is not an acceptable behavior either.
Right. But I think that is, in today's society, more rare, that behavior than cowing a little bit. Okay, but
although I would point out what it's done is it's made people assassins as opposed to warriors. It's not like the vitriol and the anger and the so-called truth speaking doesn't happen. One of the problems of social media as a platform is the anonymity it offers. People often say, "How could people really?" They look at talkbacks on anything. You probably have gotten, I can't even imagine the things that have been said to you, right? So people wouldn't say that to my face. Most of them wouldn't have the courage, like you pointed out. And that anonymity turns people from warriors into assassins. And that is not a positive development for society.
Right. And there's also a culture of stinging. There's a culture of stinging. Okay, speaking of murder of various sorts.
Speaking of assassination.
We're talking about the book of Exodus, Shmot, Chaf Aleph, 21, verse 13. A person who didn't hunt another person or didn't wait to kill another person, but it happened that God made him strike this other person in accident. I'm going to put for you a place that a accidental killer, a manslaughter, a unintentional killer can run to there. As opposed to the next verse, but when a person plans to murder his friend or his other, lehargo, to kill him, be'orma, in secrecy, me'ei mizbachi, you can even take him from my temple, from my tabernacle, from my altar itself.
Gosh, that word is like a major block for you.
I don't know why it's like an A. I'll try to remember.
I look forward to the day when we can stand in the Mikdash and I'll point and say altar. Right.
And so, but this is an interesting thing. You could take a person from the altar, and that can be understood in two ways. Either even a Kohen, before he starts his work and you found out that he's a murderer, you could take him from there. Or if a person is actually holding on to the altar.
The horns of the altar.
Right, like a safe space. And I think we had the case of Yoav, right? Joab, who was holding on to the horns of the altar. He can be taken from there. In any case, the bottom line, Rashi says, listen, we got to make a distinction. The Torah makes a distinction between, as I was talking about earlier, between murder and manslaughter. For example, a doctor who's trying to heal somebody but gives them an overdose or the wrong medicine, or simply cannot save him and ends up maybe killing him, God forbid. Or somebody that gets lashes and the right amount of lashes but dies from it, or a father who strikes his son in order to teach him but God forbid kills him, or a teacher, and gives examples. These people were certainly not trying to murder. You have to judge them very differently. Manslaughter, though it is a crime, especially when it's with negligence, than murder, which we talked about earlier.
No, absolutely. And this is always a lesson I try to get across to my kids, which is just because you didn't do something on purpose doesn't mean you're not going to live in its consequences. Right? And I think that's one of the things that the Torah teaches here. Is a very beautiful sort of moral lesson that Rashi extracts here, which is a golin zchut yedei zakain, right? That God brings it about that good things happen at the hands of those who do good, and evil happens at the hands of those who do evil. So there's always a bigger picture within which the things that we didn't intend to do but happen through us fits into. It's worthy of reflection at all times. Why did I have the opportunity to do an act of good, or God forbid, the opposite?
Yefeh. How about the difference between stealing an ox or stealing a goat? If you steal an ox, you pay a higher fine than stealing a goat. Why? Because you've taken away. So one of the explanations, because you've taken away somebody's livelihood. That's one explanation. Another one is
Kavod Abriut.
right, which is, let me get this right. I get confused about this. If a person
you steal a goat, you're going to throw it over your shoulders and run.
Right.
Which is kind of demeaning to even the thief.
What kind
Whereas
of
the ox, you're just gonna, ick. Imagine the mess afterwards.
So
you lowered yourself, so you're going to pay less because
you're going to pay less, right?
Because the reduction of your dignity is such that it is already to some degree compensation.
Wow. Okay, that's a very interesting thought. Like that is really going into into somebody that you wouldn't think that's so important to go into. But if you into their mind, but if you stole somebody's ox, you didn't just steal his property, you also stole his future welfare. That is calculated in terms of the punishment that you get when you're caught.
Right. It's also important to remember the relationship between pshat and drash in this case. Meaning, the pshat, the plain meaning of the text is like ox 5, sheep 4, zero. like that's it, right? But then the sages always want, as educators and as sort of moral instructors, want to extract a deeper level, which is like you're pointing out. If I'm so concerned about the dignity of a thief that I'm going to make him pay less because he had to throw the sheep over his shoulder and he got to lead the ox out, then sort of al chas kam v'kam, all the more so I should be concerned with the dignity of those around me. Meaning it's not the explanation for why it is written such in the Torah. It's a lesson which can be learned from the fact that it is. There's an important distinction there.
Very good, very good. The rest of the first few chapters deal with torts and really make up the huge body of tort law that Judaism has. Huge body of tort law, amazingly deep. Already just the biblical text is very deep about it, and then the Mishnah and the Talmud and the legal codex that comes out of it is massive, and it's really the stuff that even young children. This actually made me feel like I want to learn with my son the Mishnayot of the 4 different kinds of injuries. The Shomrim,
the Nizikim,
Nizikim, and all
they
that.
come together in the text here.
Right, and we're talking about either people that guard your stuff. There are different levels of what's it called? The guards? Is that the?
Yeah, the Shomrim. There's a different level of responsibility that one holds for the possessions of others. I mean, it's fascinating. The fact that the 4 types of guards, the 4 levels of responsibility you can have for someone else's possession, and the 4 sort of means of, or 5 means of recompense, so like how you have to pay back, kind of get woven into one another in these parshiot, I think is a very important lesson, which is that, again, agency and responsibility come together.
Now, before you said that the Torah it just said, there's 2 different kinds of payments for different kinds of stuff. That's the pshat. And the Torah was kind of laconic, and you have to tease it out to understand, what the deeper moral, questions behind it are. But there are a few verses here that are very verbose and clear about how God sees things, if you will. And that it comes in chapter 22, verse 21. Kol almana v'yatom lo ta'anun. A widow and an orphan, do not distress them. Do not kind of torture them. Don't make them uncomfortable. Why? Ki maneh ta'aneh, if you distress him, ki imtzo ki tz'ak, if he calls out to me, shemo shma tzakato, I will certainly hear his cry. This, by the way, also teaches us the importance of crying out to God, and that God hears. But the Talmud tells us that even if he doesn't cry out, God hears the crying. Right. But it does show you that God hears the cry. This is maybe the second time that we've learned about God hearing the cries. We also heard it about God hearing the cries of the Jewish people in Egypt. But it's important. I mean this now. God forbid any of us should need it. But if you have a problem, you got to call out, and that's an important lesson there. But then the Torah goes on and says very harsh language about specifically mistreating the orphan and the widow. V'chara api, I will get angry at you. V'aragti etchem becharev, I will kill you with the sword. V'yu neshechem almanot, and your wives will be widows. Ubanechem yutumim, and your sons will be Orphans, meaning to say there's a tit for tat in this world, as we've talked about many times, but God lays it right out for you in no uncertain terms. Mistreat these people and they cry out, I will take my vengeance upon you, and I'll turn it exactly the opposite. If you create a society which is a society that lacks in mercy and a mercy that's bound up with justice, and we'll see in just a little bit that you could be too merciful. We'll see that in just a second. But if you're not concerned with the weak people in your society, it'll all turn on you, and the elites will be the ones that face that very same destiny.
I mean, these are the types of verses in the Torah that give me nightmares in our present social construct, because we, with all the power of capitalism, and I'm a believer in private property and free enterprise, and said I'm not kofar be'ikar, as we say in the Western world. Nonetheless, I fear the fact that there is an incredible degree of callous relation to the weak, the vulnerable, and the needy in our world. And we see it in COVID now. I mean, like, I feel sometimes incredibly blessed, and other times like truly afraid of the fact that, I mean, the truth of the matter is, as much as it's been difficult from an economic standpoint, this year has been incredible for me. Like, and yet I know for a fact that a quarter of our country lives right now beneath the poverty line. And it's okay. It's tzedakah is a mitzvah, and I do, but I'm looking to our government, to our leadership, to say this is the fundamental problem. Not just, God forbid, people getting sick and dying, but look what's happening. And if we don't, this is the thing, is that God has said explicitly, I'm gonna take you down, and it's gonna hurt. And like, there's that twist of, like, Rashi points out, why does it say I'll kill you with swords and your wives will be widows and your children will be orphans? Isn't that obvious? If you're dead, Rashi says it's like a fuch al fuch, like you're going to die, but they won't even know whether you're dead. So your wife won't be able to be remarried, and your children won't be able to access their inheritance. I mean, it's like worse than you could imagine. Mm-hmm. I worry about it. I really do.
I think we could also take it just on a personal level. If you know people that suffer like that, the kindness that you could give them, the small kindnesses, can make a huge difference in their life. If you can bring a smile to the face of an orphan or a widow or people that are weak in society, that's a tremendous gift. Not always are those people easy to deal with, by the way.
No.
But if you can, it's a blessing. Let's leave it at a blessing. And in fact, let's make a blessing right now for somebody who is suffering from the COVID virus. We have Jay White, who says, Shalom, gentlemen. Good to see you both again. My mother is recovering from COVID, but still in the hospital, sedated.
Wow.
Please say another blessing for her, Yvette Bat Irene.
Be healthy and well.
We want to pray for Yvette Bat Irene to have refuah shlema, to have full health and recovery, and amongst all the people around the world, so many people who have this illness and others that need speedy recovery. And just a good thought about somebody else may return to all of us that say amen, and be blessed back in our homes as well. So Yvette Bat Irene, come back soon from the hospital.
Amen.
Here's an important one. I think an important one. This is verse 27, chapter 22. Elohim lo tekalel. Do not curse a judge or a powerful person.
Or God.
But that we know from other places as well.
Yeah, but I mean, it's both. I mean, Rashi points out, azara li birchat Hashem, azara li kilalat dayan. I mean, like, the judges and God have a direct relationship. There's not mistake that they share a proper noun here.
Very good. V'nasi be'amcha lo ta'or. And a
leader, prince amongst your people.
A prince amongst your people, don't curse him. Now, I found that the Talmud says, and I don't know why Rashi doesn't bring it here. I wonder about that. But it says, Nasi ha'oseh ma'aseh. Oh, it says, Nasi be'amcha ha'oseh ma'aseh amcha. That does the duty, the work of your people. It has to be a leader in your nation that does the work of your nation. For example, there might be elements in the political spectrum that are leaders in your nation, but they may be, in your opinion, undermining, or in the opinion of important people, undermining the work of your nation. So are you then allowed to curse them, or are you patur? Are you no longer bound by this blessing, by this commandment not to curse a leader in your nation? But the point is that this is an important one. Well, it's important in two ways. On the one hand, it's important because there's like a bird tweeting in the background. Was that a bird in your
Yes, it is a bird in my background. Would you like me to get rid of it?
No, it's beautiful. It's just like it's so tweety.
This bird and I have a long-running relationship because I hear him every morning when I'm davening.
He's quite.
It's quite. It sounds fake, right?
Yeah, it's like I'm like,
perfect.
is this a phone ring or is that like
No,
what's
no,
going
that's
on
bird.
there? Oh my gosh! Well, God bless you, little bird. Keep tweeting, okay? Keep tweeting. Tweet on our side.
That's my rockin' Robin.
That's right. Okay, don't curse a leader in your nation. That's what we're saying. What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, oh, I'm as a guy who just confessed to having no faith in the political system. I mean, what am I supposed to do? No, this is
no faith is not cursing.
No, but that's exactly why I mentioned it. Is that the next step and the danger. Being lacking faith is bad enough, but the danger of cursing is that because then you're actively undermining the structure within which you live. Meaning, a bad political system is almost always better than none at all. And those of us like myself, like yourself, who've grown up in a time of unprecedented stability, human freedom, prosperity, like, shouldn't be too quick to say like, oh, these politicians, they're all just they're out for themselves, they're corrupt. Not to say it. Why? Because it may be true, and you might need to take actions to fix it. But just talking about it simultaneously undermines the structures of stability, and by the way, is a substitute for action. If you really think it's so bad, do something.
That's right. That's a great point. I really like that point a lot. I think that adds a lot.
The revolution starts tonight, by the way. You can be in touch.
I took my daughter yesterday to help fund some of the Jewish communities, the outlying Jewish communities, the pioneering Jewish communities in Judea yesterday. Then I spoke to a group of Aish, what are they called? Generations, like a Aish tour of young boys, and I even got Isa Amru, the so-called human rights activist, the kind of anti-Jewish community rights in Hebron, but a kind of famous activist that I spar with. I got him to speak to my group. I let him speak to my group. So we were just doing a lot of stuff yesterday to kind of, I just showed my daughter, like, we're doing a lot to like hold on to this land and to develop it. So yeah, the revolution has already started. We're part of the revolution, it's a merit to live in our time, and I think it's a big waste of time, as I think you pointed out. Interestingly, it's a waste of time to curse the leaders and to just be a kind of Monday morning quarterback. Is that the expression?
Yeah, and it's more than a waste of time. It actually is a diversion of energy, in the same way that worry is often a substitute for agency.
Right.
And it's not just that you worry about things you can't affect. Let's assume that that's a waste of time, because why are you worried about it? Like, what are you going to do? Worrying about things which you can affect becomes psychologically, and I see this in my counseling all the time, it is a close enough to a feeling of action that often people then fail to ever access the things which they could do in the same way. It's like
such an important point what you're saying now, and I want everybody to turn on their like self-help hat right now, which is like, just what Rav Mike is saying is worry and nervousness is many times a kind of soft inner excuse to not do the things that you know that you can do. And it fulfills that. It like satisfies that place. But it's a bad cycle. It's a bad addiction.
And by the way, and I'll stop with this, one of the ways to get out of that cycle is being kind to oneself and asking, well, why am I not acting on this? Oftentimes there are very real reasons that we choose to worry as opposed to act or curse our leaders because they're real challenges, etc. It's not like I'm criticizing everybody who worries is just wasting their energy. No, often there are very real and perhaps even good reasons, but you have to ask yourself that question in order to begin to gain agency in your life.
Okay, let's go on. This is a great verse. Verse 30. Ve'anshe kodesh tihiyun li. You'll be a holy people unto me.
It's a command. Be.
That's right. Be a holy people. Right. Be a holy people. Ubasar basadeh trefa lo tochlu. And if you find a dead animal in the field, don't eat it.
Yeah.
Because it ain't holy. Lakela tashlichun oto, which means give it to the dog. And by the way, if you're reading it, let's say in English or from a perspective of like that this is literature, it's literary. It's like throw it to the dog. But the sages are like, oh well, that means that you could sell it, you could derive pleasure from it, you could sell it to a Gentile, you could utilize this thing, but you can't eat it because you've got a holy status, and I want you to be an Anshe Kodesh.
But don't lose the literary power here, because the literary power is, what does it mean? This is, by the way, one of the more important verses in terms of understanding what holiness is, which is always an elusive term, which is that on this level, holiness means you're not an animal. Mm-hmm. Because the normal thing to do in the ancient world, and even today, is when resources come to you, you consume them. What do I care how it got here? What do I care if it's a little bit, messed up by a wolf or whatever? So the Torah is saying that that's a dog's attitude, and that's fine for a dog. In fact, you should give it to your dog. Mm-hmm. Go for it. Because in fact, they say that this is the dog's reward, that they didn't bark at Am Yisrael when they left Egypt. But you're not a dog. You're a human being. You're a mensch, as we say in Yiddish. And that's part of what it means to be holy, which is that you control your urges and your needs and your desires and even your legitimate estimation that could profit from this, and you're Anshe Kodesh.
Very good. Very good. Big difference. We're not dogs. And maybe the regular Hasbara folks will say, you see, that's why we can't believe that we come from monkeys. It's like a different thing. It's not like we're part of the same thing. We're on the same spectrum. It's like, no, you have a separate role to play. And there is a role for the others. There isn't a role for the dog and for the different things.
For sure, the whole world.
That. Right.
God made it all.
Okay, the next bit of laws we'll talk about. I'm skipping so many important things, but they'll talk about the festivals. We'll talk about the gosh, should I do this or not? Oh my gosh. I think I just have to read this verse just to read it. This is verse 23:8. V'shochad lo tikach. Don't take bribery. Ki hashochad yaver pikrim. Because bribery will blind the wise people, the clever people. You'll be blinded. And pikrim also means open eyes, but your open eyes will become blind. V'yisalef divrei tzadikim, and will warp the words of the just, but another way of tzaddik has an element of like straight. So you'll become the blind, the open-eyed clever will become blinded. The straight leaning will become crooked. So don't take bribery, but bribery could be a lot of things. Bribery could be. It's back to the issue we talked about before.
It could be champagne. It could be cigars.
It could be those things, but I think it's more. I think bribery a lot of times in our modern life is you'll be cool. That's a kind of bribery as well.
Yes, almost it's social capital for sure.
Right.
That's a real thing.
You'll be on the right side of history, eh? You won't be with the other bad guys, which we just besmirched very badly.
Yes.
Maybe you're like. Anyway, I'm not going to get into the American spectrum of it. But anyway, I wanted to read that particular passage. Okay. But one passage that may surprise a lot of people, and I want to read this for the Gentiles that listen to this program. A lot of people wonder why sometimes we try not to say the name of other people's gods, and sometimes they'll my Christian friends will be kind of weirded out by the fact that we won't say the name of their God, their deity. We may get upset they may get upset at this weird unwillingness to say it. Just okay, it's our thing, so just say it. No, the Torah actually has a verse about that, which you should know about, and I think this is a verse that's instructive for everybody. This is verse 23:13. Everything that I've said to you, tishameru, protect yourselves from. Do not. Make a protection of it. Don't abide by these things so that they will keep you safe. V'shem Elohim acherim lo taskiru. Do not say the name of other gods, or don't mention the names of other gods. Lo yishama al picha. It should not be heard on your mouth.
This
and just the technical point of that is, let's say you're in Manhattan and you're like, okay, I'm going to meet me at the corner of this church and this church. The Torah says, don't do that. Don't mention that as a place marker. or say, let's meet the day after Christmas. Torah says, no, don't do that. You know what I mean? Say, say Sunday, this and this date, but don't do this thing where you give a status and a beauty or any kind of like over respect to this thing, which I don't want you to respect too much. You're a Jewish people. You're separate. You're not to mention Christmas as the date of or meet at this corner. Better say meet at 5th and 42nd rather than say at this and this church.
And in many ways, this is an expression of where we began in this idea of the problematics of consensus reality, right? Meaning what the scene that is portrayed behind you, and we believe to be the beginning of an exposure of a deeper layer of what will ultimately be a human reality. But the problem is that the Jews are just like everybody else, so therefore we can easily fragment. And so what God's saying is that don't use these as your reference points.
Right.
Don't, because this is not about worshiping, like you pointed out. This is not about idolatry. Obviously, there's a connection. It's about what frame do you use for the world in which you move. It's very similar in that respect to the fact that, according to many opinions, one shouldn't count the months as numbers from the secular calendar, because it says that Nisan is supposed to be the first of months.
Right.
So that you can't. It's not that you can't say January, February, but you shouldn't say the second month in reference to February.
Right.
Because that's not your frame of reference.
That doesn't mean it doesn't have its own legitimacy in its own place, but that's not our thing. That's not what we represent in this world. And I think that distinction is very important. I want to tell you about a certain thing that happened to me once. I was at a rally, the 9th of Av rally that's run by the Women in Green organization, and I was asked to speak in English there, and it was like a fast night, fast day, and I was speaking there in front of a lot of people, and there was a lot of cameras and stuff, and I said something to the effect of, God does not. I said Jewish people are liberal. That's a tendency that we have, and that means that we believe in liberties, we believe in people's rights, and we believe in people's rights to and value. But at the same time, I asked, are we liberal with God? Do we believe that God has got His rights? And he says about this holy city, Jerusalem, and it's a Tisha B'Av night, which is the night that we remember the destruction of Jerusalem, the year we pine away for the rebuilding of Jerusalem. And I said, are we liberal with God? Because all God asks is, He doesn't say take down mosques and churches and other places. He doesn't say go around the world and destroy their
Conquer,
stuff. Right. He doesn't say do that, but He says this tiny little place, Israel, this room, my room, in my little room, I want it to be empty of these things. I want it to be a place for the service of the way I'm passing on to you the Torah. There's other places in the world for those religions and those ways, and I'm not taking it away, but give me my little room, and if you give me my little room, the whole world will be transformed. And this was caught on video, and a lot of people who don't like the things that I stand for.
What you stand for, right?
Right. So they use that video, and my wife and other people said to me, maybe you should take off this video from YouTube or whatever it was, and I said, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to kowtow to this. Like, yeah, it's not like very favorable in a politically correct environment, and yes, they'll use it against me, but I'm just going to have to stand by what I said. I didn't say anything wrong. I just said this little place is where God wants this thing. And I'm how should I say? I'm not going to be forced to recognize your thing as co-equal in this small place. And that's not always very popular. I'm sure it's not popular what I'm saying right now. But it's our truth. And to be able to say that is it's our truth.
Yeah, it's very hard in the world, which on one hand has sort of like elevated and glorified that notion of it's my truth, this is my identity, etc. But somehow when it comes to certain categories, and Am Yisrael is always up there, not you, right? Because your truth is an inconvenient truth, to borrow a phrase.
Okay, so that was a very interesting discussion, and now do you have, how many more minutes do you actually have with Mike Feuer?
A few, but not many.
Like what? Like 7 minutes?
Yeah, we can do 7.
Okay.
But like really 7.
Yeah. First thing, I want everybody to join Rav Mike's other show, which is the Jewish Story podcast, found at jewishstory.co, and also his spiritual guidance work, which is found at ravmike.co. ravmike.com. That's right.
That's right.
And that's very, very helpful to a lot of people, saving marriages and stuff like that. Even dieting advice. Forget about it. You're gonna get a spiritual makeover, and you're gonna be renewed and rebuilt.
Spiritual makeover.
You like that?
No, actually, no, I don't. But it was funny.
Yeah. Well, funny's good in its own way. What I want to do right now is I want to read in English the seventh Aliyah, part of the seventh Aliyah, and I want you to stop me whenever you think it needs to be commented upon. Okay, that's
Okay.
the way I read this thing, and I'm like, I just got to read this out loud, and you could stop me and pause me anytime. Here we go. There shall be no woman who loses her young or is infertile in your land. I shall fill the number of your days. I shall send my fear before you, and I shall confound the people amongst you whom you shall come to, meaning to say your enemies that you're coming to the land and you'll fight with. And I shall make all your enemies turn their back of their neck to you, as in run away. I shall send the hornet swarm before you, and I will drive out the Hivite, the Canaanite, and the Hittite before you. I shall not drive them away in a single year, lest the land become desolate, and the wildlife of the field multiply against you. Little by little shall I drive them away from you, until you become fruitful, and make the land your heritage. I shall set the border from the Sea of Reeds to the Sea of the Philistines. Some people tell me that Eilat is not part of Israel. There you go, from the Sea of Reeds to the Sea of the Philistines, and from the wilderness onto the river. For I shall deliver the inhabitants of the land into your hand, and you shall drive them away from before you.
So just pause for a second.
Yeah.
A lot aside, right now, next year is the sabbatical year, Shemitah year. So I've already started my learning, and it started with the question of the borders of the land.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is the borders of the land is a complicated historical process, and
Right.
I think that's important to appreciate, that this is part of what God is saying here, is that, like, I have an ultimate destination, which is this full extent of the kingdom, but it's not a magic wand, people. Right? It's, first of all, contingent on all these mitzvot, these commandments I've given you, and second of all, it's still process oriented.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, sorry.
I just want to tell you very shortly. I was with Noam Arnon, the legendary spokesman of Hebron, yesterday in the car for half a day, and I asked him big questions, and he just said to me, "It's a time of opportunity." The whole question is, are we going to seize the opportunity or not? That's the question here. I was like, what's the grade that we're getting for this third arrival of the Jewish people in the land of Israel? He's like, it's all a matter of opportunity. Are we seizing the opportunity or not? Anyway, let's keep going. Right. From
Lo tikrot.
Yes. You shall not seal a covenant with them or their gods. They shall not dwell in your land, lest they cause you to sin against me, that you will worship their gods, for it will be a trap for you.
So pause.
Right.
You gave me the power, so I'm going to hit again.
Yeah. No,
it's a very important lo tichot lahem lehem brit. So it's a very specific term here, that a brit, a covenant, has two aspects in biblical thought. One is the contractual, which people are often familiar with. I'll do this, you do that, we'll make a deal. But that's not actually what's being spoken about here, because elsewhere in the Torah it speaks about the idea of mas and shiabud, right? Taxation and subjugation, which sound harsh in our ears, but frankly, as people who live even within a democracy, we can understand what taxation and subjugation looks like.
Sure.
But the other side of a covenant is it's in sort of its unbreakable element. That it is a commitment to one another which transcends the utilitarian functionality of contract, and that you may not do, says God, because I need you to fill this land.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's, I think, a very important usage of brit here.
Yeah, and I think that we are missing the opportunity to hold on to our land. Certainly, traveling through Judea yesterday, I saw a lot of missed opportunity.
But part of that is because we don't know how to relate to the very real human beings that live here.
That's part of that, certainly. Part of that is that we've been coming out of 2,000 years of fear is not an easy
but those two don't they're directly related, meaning the fear mentality is like an all or nothing mentality, either cower in fear or destroy, right? And neither of them is a viable strategy right now. And unfortunately, since we've been basically muddling the situation for over 50 years, we've made it worse and worse. We've created realities that didn't need to be struggled with in our relationship with the Arabs of this land. It's
That's absolutely true. And I at the same time that I had this kind of like painful sights yesterday that I saw in Judea, I also had an evening Zoom event, Arabs and Jews talking around the same stuff, and we had a great time. We just had such a great conversation about the will of God. By the way, it's so fun to talk with Arabs as opposed to Westerners because they have like a regular layman will tell you about God and Allah and what He wants and how to talk to Him, how to pray to Him, and it's just like it's very. I thought to myself, boy, this is fun to be able to talk to a modern person about God in a serious way without feeling any kind of weird embarrassment about it. Because you talk to like a Westerner, it's like, they're like secularists. It's like, like it was just so like, I'm like, this is great. All right, we got to get through this. This is very important stuff. So I want to.
All right, finish quickly. It up because I got to go.
Yep. To Moses, I also have a meeting, by the way. Oh,
I think you're late.
I actually have to go. Yeah. All right, so I'll just read this. I gotta leave in 5 minutes. I gotta leave. To Moses, he said, "Go up to Hashem, you, Aaron, Nadav, and Avihu, and the 70 elders, and you shall prostrate yourselves from a distance. And Moses alone shall approach Hashem, but they shall not approach, and the people shall not go up with him." Moses came to the people and told the words of Hashem and all the ordinances, and the entire people responded with one voice. They said, "All the words that Hashem has spoken, we will do." And I want to skip a little bit. 1 second.
It's a long aliyah. I was so surprised you had to read it all.
Because I thought it's so important. Moses, Aaron, Nadav, and Avihu, and the 70 elders ascended. They saw the God of Israel, and under his feet was the likeness of sapphire brickwork. And it was like the essence of the heaven in purity. Against the great men and the children of Israel, God did not stretch out his hand, and they gazed at the God, and they ate and drank.
I mean, I can't there's no way to address that.
Is that honestly some of the most? It's clearly meant to be some of the most mystical phrases in the Torah, and I love it that it's bound up in the Torah portion where it's like the law and the technical of tort law and all that, and then it's like. And by the way, they saw God and they gazed upon the sapphire brickwork, whatever that means.
We're going to leave it as a mystery.
We'll leave it as a mystery. That's right.
Do I.
Rav Mike Feuer, I want to wish you a Shabbat Shalom. I want to thank you so much. I also want to say that I got a great package of stuff from Prohibition Pickle this week, and I hope that you will as well.
I wanted to mention, thank you, Buster. I also I have a delivery coming, and I'm so excited. I don't know who it's from. It hasn't yet been revealed to me. So whoever you are out there, thank you.
All right, Prohibition Pickle is one of the sponsors of our show, and check them out on Instagram and Facebook. And they make our Shabbos awesome. They can make your Shabbat awesome if you're in the land of Israel. Great. I even got my favorite. It's almost ineffable. The ineffable name, salami. Yes, it was delicious. And there's many more sponsors. We'll talk about it later tonight. I'll be back on live again. For now, I want to thank everybody for being with us from all over the world. Catherine says, always thought-provoking. Toda rabah, Rabbis Mike and Yishai. Shabbat Shalom. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you very much. Rav Mike, thank you for taking your time. God bless you. And may Hashem help us learn this Torah portion, understand it, its depth, and also learn its further depths in the Mishnah and in the Talmud. And then finally, of course, to making it really, being able to pass it to our children and making it part of our real life. So thank you so much, Rav Mike.
Amen. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody. God bless. See you soon. And I'm out. Lots of blessings. Write me an email, Yishai@thelandofisrael.com, YishaiFleischer.com. Always here for you. And we'll be back with more live programming here on whatever you're watching right now and more great stuff. Thanks to all the listeners. Thank you to my good friend Lou Weiss, who's helping produce the show. Lou Weiss says, thank you, rabbis. Shabbat Shalom. Thank you, guys, and God bless. Blessings from the land of blessings and shalom.